With F1 testing coming up just in a couple of days' time, finally some of the teams have started to release their cars. With big teams having a drive today for the first time in Bahrain, we are going to look at some of the details that have come up on the new cars and some of the things to talk about today. Now, first of all, we've obviously got to start with the fact that Aston Martin have showed their car and released their car as well. Now, many of you and me as well, we're probably considering that their car wasn't going to be very successful this year because it has been reported they are focusing on that 2026 year with the new regulations. Now, actually, we obviously don't know anything about times yet or anything, but the car from just an aesthetic point of view definitely looks a lot different. Compared to the renders that were released just before, it does look incredibly different with the car. It looks like they are trying to model realistically that McLaren car from last year, which was probably their best car throughout the year. Now, looking into some of the details of the car, it looks like they've gone for a push rod suspensions on the back and the front, a lot like that Williams car that has been reported. And it looks like the side pods have a big, much heavier undercut, which will be challenged over the top surface. This will hopefully get a lot of that air going into the back of the car and make the whole thing a lot easier to drive, and it should be better under them conditions. And it is definitely one of their major points with this AMR25 is that they're trying to get that rear end sort of figured out and be a lot more stable than it was last year, so they can have a better car. Now, aesthetically, the car just does look different. There's definitely clear changes to the nose. The nose is a little bit more pointier and a bit longer, and the car does seem a lot more tighter packaged, so we'll have to see if that makes a real difference. But I do think it's a big surprise considering we didn't think they were going to change the car too much and sort of throw this year away in some aspects because next year's the big one. But they have done well to change the car considerably, obviously not being able to change that power unit going into next year. Now, they are not the only team that also went out. Haas went out and Ollie Behrman got a little bit on the track. From the car, you can probably see in this video and other things that, yeah, they've kind of considered and changed not really that much. It's subtle changes. Maybe the floor has changed a lot. We obviously wouldn't be able to see that just yet, but they've still kept that nosier point which they had towards the end of last year, which they saw them have a good success. And I think some other teams are sort of getting that pointier nose in the front wing as well. And overall, this car does look very similar to the one last year, obviously hoping to build on that success. And they are the smallest team in F1. There's only so much they can do considering they're also going to be focusing on that 2026 with that big regulation change. Now, that leads us obviously onto the biggest team that announced their car, and that was Mercedes. Now, they put this teaser out earlier. We knew that they were going to be on track today. It's been reported for a while now that Antonelli was going to get a run out, and Mercedes have been pretty open about when they're going to be driving over the next couple of days, already releasing their schedule compared to other teams. Now, this is the car then. Obviously, we saw it the other day, but that was mostly a sort of older package deal. They didn't really have everything announced, and this is the full thing. As you can see, it's got that pointier nose that we spoke about before, and honestly, it doesn't look as similar as the car from last year. The car livery wise looks a little bit different when you look at it in this new setting, and I do think there's a lot of changes as well that we can't really know too much yet because it's going to be on the floor, but it's certainly interesting. And even Mercedes themselves have spoken about how that this is going to be a bit of a weird year for them. They're not really sure about the expectations. I did see that they said anyone could win and they expect a lot of winners, so maybe they can get a few wins on the board, but he's saying that it's harder to really get much gains on other teams because it's the fourth year with these changes with the chassis that they've had, and next year everyone's kind of preparing for that 2026 big regulation change, so they've only done what they could this year and don't really think that much is going to change from last year, which is actually quite interesting. And even here it says that they're not really expecting too much to happen. They kind of think the end of the era has happened, so it's not necessarily very positive thinking just because they've released their car. But James Allison does make it clear that 2026 is probably the aim for them and a lot of teams because of how much it's going to change the landscape, and it's about being early to that rather than focusing on 1 year selectively. So that kind of makes sense when you think about it in that way. Now, just having a different look at the car itself, it does definitely look a very interesting one, and something that I didn't really pick up before is actually how much the side pods look like the RB20. If you look at some of the side pods, they do look very similar to that car from last year. There's actually a bit of a change from quite a lot of the size of the car, so that is definitely an interesting change that maybe wasn't too picked up on, but we can definitely see it now from when the car has been released. Now, overall, it's still early days. Not much has been released about the car, so we will see more in the future. Obviously, the test schedule is coming up. They announced theirs, unlike a lot of teams, coming up in the next few days, with Kimi going out first on that Wednesday, where we hopefully will get to see how good he is in the car, how the car's looking, and sort of the expectations you can have for Mercedes, because a lot of people are not really expecting them to compete with the top three, and they could be that fourth team. And I definitely think their comments make me think that's probably the way they're looking as well. But it's still going to be a developmental year anyway for Kimi to get better, which is always going to be interesting. And that leads us on to the testing schedule. The UK times are here, and obviously very early on that Wednesday morning. It's going to be very interesting to see what sort of happens, and hopefully we get some more details of what people actually think about the car going in future, especially later on today. Let me know in the comments what you guys think overall, and please like and subscribe for any more Formula 1 news. Thank you guys for watching.